Welcome everybody to this special webinar with Dr. Scott Blackman. My name is Anderson Williams. I work here at Shore Capital in Talent Development. We're really excited today to hear from Dr. Blackman. We're going to lead this as a conversation. You guys can listen in and you can add your questions in the Q&A box, and I will get to as many of those as possible as we wrap up the conversation today. I'll keep an eye on it. I've got my computer up so I can keep an eye on it, but we'll get to as many as possible. This is a conversation that Dr. Blackman and I started a couple of months ago, and he and I kind of got excited about what we were talking about and said, hey, we should just do a webinar on this and record the conversation. So that's how we got here, and I hope you find it useful. I think you really will. It's really compelling. So I'm just going to start by asking Dr. Blackman to introduce himself, and then we'll jump right into today's topic.
Well, thank you, Anderson. It's a really, and team, Ben and Dr. Burcham and everyone. It's an incredible facility. It's always great to be here at the Shore headquarters, and I'm really excited to share a bit. So again, I'm Scott Blackman, founding doctor of Southern Orthodontic Partners, and have been in the private practice of orthodontics now for 26, going on 27 years. That's pretty wild. So time flies when you're having fun, I guess. But a native North Carolinian, born and raised on the East Coast, and was a transplant to Tennessee back around the high school years, and spent my whole life wanting to be a jet fighter pilot, and grew up right around the Air Force Base Seymour Johnson over there, and had my pathway set ever since as far back as I can remember. And in fact, started my undergrad studies as a aeronautical engineer major in the engineering college, and had my pathway set to the academy and the whole nine. And then I had to go work for an orthodontist my first winter break. It was a happenstance opportunity. Dr. Stan Warner, dear man to my life, and really a reason I'm here today, honestly. His son went off to residency, and I filled his seat building appliances, retainers, and so forth. And so I was just fell in love instantly with the practice and the team and what he got to do every day, the unveiling and changing people's lives. It was really, really compelling. So I leave a week early to go back, talk to my advisor, jump ship, and go from engineering college to liberal arts college and pre-health. So ended up at Tennessee, University of Tennessee dental program, and then did my residency there, following in Dr. Warner's footsteps. And then was beelining back to North Carolina to start my own practice from scratch. And I met my now retired mentor, Dr. Jerry Carr. He too is a dear man in my life and a phenomenal mentor back in the day. But it was a bit different than it is now, transitioning. But this was a practice that was founded back in 1948, and so I was to be the third orthodontist leader / owner of this great practice, and went through the years and helped grow it. And then we had the transition all designed for when he was ready to start stepping down. Things started happening when just a bit of framing in that when I came out in the late 90s, orthodontics was strictly a referral-based specialty. So dentists did the general dentistry, and the pediatric dentist did the pedo work, and orthodontists did the orthodontics. So I had a few years of that before it all started to change. This product called Invisalign came out in the late 90s and became a really good working product in the 2000s, and is a great product today. But what I saw happening was a behavioral change in our specialty, meaning that these once referrers were now doing the tooth alignment, the orthodontic treatment. And so and then there were two other trends. I guess there were three major trends that were really shaping our specialty in the early and mid 2000s that were really causing me to think. And what if I wake up tomorrow and this once traditional 100% referral type of business changed, and what if they all went away? How would an orthodontic practice kind of flourish and differentiate and thrive, on its own?
And in your case, one that had been around since the 40s,
correct?
Right? Like truly established.
Exactly,
right?
Exactly. And so that really caused me to think. Then this hotel experience had to happen, and then that changed my pathway professionally. And then it really, I realized really a two part vision, Anderson. It was more, first phase was, all about creating a brand that really stood for something and creating a sort of a brand of advocates for the brand. And phase 2 was then scaling said brand. How do we increase the number that we serve and how well we serve them? So that's where we are today, thankfully, with SOP.
When you were looking at that, Scott, and you were looking at new technology entering the space, right? You were seeing a shift in customer expectations and demand, and you were seeing a sort of referral-based system of business development shifting. When you had your experience at the Ritz, and I wanted you to step back and share a little bit about that, where was your head amidst all of that? I mean, you'd had to feel like your profession and everything was changing so rapidly. I wanted to hear just a little bit about you. You'd taken a vacation, you had all of that on your mind, and then you had this experience at the Ritz that gave you a kind of aha. Can you just share a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Again, at the time, I was thinking, what's the answer to the question, right? And so it was a weekend in December in 2005, right in the midst of, really when things were really starting to rev up and change, Anderson. And so we escaped and went to opening weekend of the Ritz Carlton down in Grand Cayman, and we had stayed at some lovely hotels before and been to some pretty places, but that had never been at a Ritz per se. So it was December 19th, 2005, and John Hennigan is a dear man, dear friend, and he recognizes it, and his graciousness every year is a very important day. I get a bottle of wine on December 19th, so it's pretty awesome.
He's the partner for SOP, right?
He's our chairman for our SOP platform. So yes. Anyway, best I can tell you, Anderson, is that for those, we were there for 4 days. And from the moment we crossed the threshold to the moment we left, best I could tell you is we felt different than at any other place we'd ever, not just a hotel, but any place of business. Whether I was speaking with the bellman, the receptionist, the GM himself, or a bartender, I mean, we were made to feel extraordinarily special. And the level of engagement was unlike anything I'd ever experienced before. I've got 100 stories I could tell you from the Ritz, but one of my favorites is my wife Jennifer and I are walking back from the beach, and beautiful place, but expansive property. So we're going down hallway after hallway, it seemed, and so this housekeeper, I can see her face today with a little yellow dress and a little white apron, and she pushes her cart to the side of the hallway and she says, "Dr. and Mrs. Blackman, how was your day at the beach today? I hope it was wonderful. Is there anything I can do to help prepare you for your spectacular dinner at Blue tonight?" This was their signature restaurant. And so now the catch is, I never saw this person before, nor did I ever see her again during our stay there, yet she knew our name and where we were having dinner and was offering services to really make it even more special. So again, I found out later how they did that, which was pretty cool. But anyway, this was a really special, just it hit you right in the heart, right in the face, right? And so just multiple stories like this, but that was just it. And then on the way back to the airport after we left, I said, Jen, this is it. If we could make patients, clientele, customers feel this way, and we have a wonderful, I love my job. So, as an orthodontist, we have patients for a lifetime. That's how we present it in the exam room. But, we get people to A, enjoy their experience, and B, look forward to every time they get to come back. And, you're going to finish at, as a teen at 22, 44, 66, we're here for you.
Yeah.
I'm by nature on my second generation of patient, inherited my third through Dr. Carr. And so it really is a perfect setting for this type of patient experience.
What made you think, though, I feel like there are probably a lot of people watching and listening that would say, well, yeah, I've paid a lot of money to go to a nice resort, or I've dreamed of paying a lot of money of going to a nice resort. And so you get what you pay for, that there's this great experience, and that's what you pay for. What made you think that was relevant to your practice and your team?
Sure. Well, it was all about experience. going through this weekend, there's the aha moment that, you can have that same purpose. You can engage. You don't have to be a hotel brand, right? And so, this was about an experience that left an indelible mark on me, and how do I do it? It sounds great. How do we make this happen in real time in our practice? But how do you put process to it? And then how do you scale it? How do you make it, come to life and make sure it happens? And it's all about culture. So, that led me to down the pathway of, okay, it's not what we do, it's more why we do it. It's about purpose and engagement, right? And then that opened up the rabbit hole and led me down these various pathways, and that part of the story started again on the way home, and you're Googling the company, and then you see the book, The Gold Standard, Ritz Carlton. That was sort of the first step in going down that pathway, and you just learn more. A great read, but you learn about the Ritz story there.
Yeah. But you ended up going to school with the Ritz.
I did,
right?
Yeah.
How was that part of just what you found in the rabbit hole? But then, just thinking about logistics, time, investment, how you even got started.
Yeah. So that was one component. It's just understanding and learning a little bit about the company and the history of the company,
yeah.
right? And then we had a Ritz. The closest property to at the time to where we were living was the Ritz Carlton in Buckhead, Atlanta, and so made an appointment where I could talk to the general manager there, which was kind of a big step. And so it was he was so gracious with his time, but it was more of an interview, kind of a, hey, here's my interest, here's my thought, here's my experience with your property down in the Caymans. And so that gentleman was the one who first introduced me to the Ritz Carlton Leadership Center. There were two basic doors that he opened, and that was the first one. The Ritz Carlton Leadership Center, Anderson, is sort of a subset of the Ritz. It's a company within a company now. So up at their headquarters in Chevy Chase, Maryland, they opened this or started this program shortly after winning their Malcolm Baldrige National Quality Award for the second time. Now, that's one of very few companies to have ever done that. That's a good resource to malcolmbaldrige.com. You can Google that. That's an enormous resource. Frameworks for excellence in building culture and so forth. But anyway, they won that for the second time, and they then set out with the great purpose of sharing best practice of how do we transform culture and then sustain said culture. And they do presentations worldwide. They're working with a lot of hospitals right now. They're big into healthcare, and so I ended up spending about a 6, almost 7-year tenure with them, going through helping them with the healthcare program as well. Got to do some interactions there. That's just a great part of my professional journey, one of my favorites. And then the second door that gentleman opened was he actually extended an offering to where, as we were going through this process of culture transformation, we got to bring the leadership team down from the practice and actually shadow some of the leaders with the Ritz Carlton in Buckhead. We got to attend their morning lineups and spend 2 days there in the hotel backing some of these managers and leaders. So incredible experience, almost like a sabbatical for guest service, right?
Yeah.
So,
and what did your team think? Just to jump in, like you're bringing your orthodontic team down to meet with a hotel. Like, it all seems a little, did they think you were crazy? Did they know you well enough to know, okay, there's something here? But how did they respond to that initial conversation after you'd had this sort of aha moment, and now you're coming back and saying we're gonna go study with the Ritz?
They were just excited to stay at a Ritz Carlton.
Fair enough.
No, they were okay. Yeah, we'll get to this here later, but we were going. It's all about people. At the end of the day, it's all about people. Again, it's first who, then what. You build a team first. We preach lateral service before vertical service, is what we say inside the practice. But on top of that foundation, you can do anything you want with your clientele. You got to shore up the team. You have to get to borrow from Jim Collins, the right people on the bus, the wrong people off the bus, and everybody on the right seats. But we had 3 at the time that were not the right people. I think you can teach a lot of things. You can teach trade skills and everything you need to be successful. But I believe that people bring servant leadership or a heart for service to the table, and don't know that you can teach that. I'm not sold that you can. All that said was that I have 9 at the time that were so bought into the vision and could not wait to get there. Those a subset of that 9 were part of that initial group that went down to the Ritz, right?
Yeah.
So these were just 4 of our key leaders within the business, within the practice. So they were bought in from the beginning. So they could not wait to get down there. They were excited to learn from. They saw the overlap and how we could, make people feel the way I felt that weekend and execute that on a daily basis. They were really more excited about the process for getting the right people on the bus. It's a bit of survival. I think we've all seen it in business where we see amongst our employee base that there's groups. There's sometimes the red bandanas and the blue bandanas like Survivor, and if we don't need any of that. You can't execute great guest experience, customer experience if you're not completely aligned as a team and bought into the vision as a team. So they were very excited.
Yeah. Well, I'm curious. I know it's 7 years worth of work, and not to mention all that you've learned since then. But like, if you said, okay, here are the couple of key principles. You had the aha from the experience standpoint. You started learning sort of what happens behind the scenes, sort of inside of the Ritz, and then their own training. What were a couple of the key principles that you found early that you were like, yes, those are the things I'm going to hold on to and start working with my team?
Fundamentally, it's absolutely, like we said a minute ago, first who, then what. The Ritz Carlton is meticulous about who, right? We developed a very robust hiring process. I think we'll get to this in a minute, but we have to develop a select versus hire mentality. I don't have to hire anybody. I have choices as a boss, as a leader. You have the choice of who you get into the tribe, and so you have to be very disciplined, and you have to be patient at times. But the worst thing I can do is bring the wrong person into the fold, and then there goes the original problem, right? So that's one. 2 is absolutely having a very clear why. Having a just cause that's very exciting to those who you need to excite, and have a very clear purpose. I can't stress this enough. I mean, even what you desire your culture to be, or if you already have a great culture, what does that mean? The Ritz uses a Credo card for this. I think many have heard about the Ritz Carlton Credo card, but it's the employee manual on a business card that's a quad-fold size business card. It's part of every employee's uniform. 50,000 employees around the globe at a Ritz Carlton property has this very same Credo card in their pocket. And so it's 12 service standards, it's a motto, it's a credo, it's an employee promise, and their 3 steps of service on the back. And this is their Bible. This is their belief. This is their culture on paper. And I love this because it is so succinct, so direct. You can't misunderstand it. Your expectations, or my expectations as a Ritz Carlton employee, is right there, in black and white. And it's a measure. It's a measuring stick. It's something you can fall back on for disciplinary action or coaching up. I believe in coaching up or coaching out. And so, this is something you have to be disciplined on. First who, then what. So having that, I believe a great leader or a great visionary makes that future seem like it's right here in your face right now. And then you have to, once that is defined, that just cause, then you have to be diligent about finding those people. There are people out there that are aligned with that cause, and will rally around it and be excited about it. And that is a super important measure. Another thing that we have brought back and adopted there is, things like patient mystique, meaning that we capture interests, preferences, likes, dislikes on every single patient that comes through our door. And that helps us get to know them, right? But B, it helps us plan for some wow stuff, kind of like happened with me with that housekeeper in the hallway, right?
Yeah.
So, Johnny's playing in the state championship baseball game between this visit and next. When I go out to get Johnny, I'm gonna, greet Mom and Johnny and say, oh, by the way, how'd the game go? Tell us about it. Did you win? It goes well if they did win, but they don't want to bring it up. But what interests me there is that really engages Mom and perhaps Johnny if he's old enough. But then what happens is the people to the left and right or right around the earshot or visual of that have been just completely blown away because, hey, they really know their people here, right? So that's another. And then, things like reward and recognition.
How do you, before we get to
Sure.
just practically speaking, because I suspect a lot of people have it in the back of their minds as they listen, like that idea of mystique. So how do you capture, let's use Johnny's state championship baseball, like how does the team, just practically fundamentally speaking, it's one thing for one employee to hear that. It's another thing for it to be captured and either documented or shared with other employees. So you might not hear it, but somebody else might hear it. How does that even work among your team for capturing those kinds of things?
So we use two things. Fundamentally, we use a Ritz Carlton best practice called the 3 steps of service. You'll never hear anybody on this team going to the edge of the reception area and calling for Johnny across the room. Okay, so there's there's process to getting a patient out of the lobby, back into the chair, back to Mom, and then out the door. So we do it every patient, every time, morning to evening. So this 3 steps of service is reading mystique that we have captured, knowing what they're here for today, what they were here for last time, going out, introducing, saying, hey, how's it going? How'd it go the first week in braces or, the first appointment interval? And well, last time was, an hour. Today's much quicker. We'll only have Johnny back for 15 minutes. And then, oh, by the way, how did the state championship baseball game? So every employee is charged. It's a non-negotiable. They capture patients in this fashion, 3 steps of service. And then that second step of the 3 steps is where there's full-on engagement between what worker is working with Johnny, and then in that engagement, they are just using their gifts. They're talking, bringing things out, asking, getting to know them. And then if something is compelling or noteworthy, there is a box in our practice management system that they'll type out as part of every chart entry, and it's dated as Johnny's playing in the state baseball game, and that. So every person can see that. So that same person doesn't have to get Johnny next time. It can be me noticing it and going out and using that information, or somebody else on the team.
And I think the amazing thing about that is that in this idea of moving toward this idea of guest relationships, asking Johnny about his baseball tournament is profoundly impactful. They're there to maybe get their teeth straightened or what have you, but that connection is really quite profound, that somebody knows you, that you're not just a transaction, whether you're there as a patient or you're bringing your child as a patient, you're bringing your pet as a patient, whatever it might be.
Absolutely.
Or you're in a store, right? Or you're a vendor on another end of the line. You could do the same thing if you're talking to an important vendor and you're keeping track of, last time we talked, they said their daughter was getting married on the weekend. So make a note and follow up. Next time I talk to that vendor, I'm going to ask how the wedding was.
Sure.
Right? Like those little things are the things that make us feel important and special, regardless of what we're buying or what service we're there to receive.
100%. Absolutely. And, there's great power back to the first two. Once you have those people that you like, that you trust, getting the right people around you on the team that are aligned with your vision and your just cause, now you can trust them until you give them reason not to, and then you can empower them. And even if it costs a few dollars, I've had employees that have acknowledged a dear pet's birthday, and when they come to the appointment, there's a little thing, hey, Spot turns 12 today, whatever, here's a little gift for Spot, so this type of thing. And it's really, really cool, and it's the best money you can spend. So they're not going to go spend, they know if it's over just a handful of change, then they're going to get some permissions for it. Yeah. But to that point, it's really interesting. The Ritz has the most profound empowerment policy I've ever heard of. Now, get this. 50,000 employees across the globe are empowered to spend $2,000 per guest per day.
Oh my goodness.
Now, do they do that?
Yeah.
No. But if I mess up on a wake up call or Steve loses his dear stuffed animal, whatever, they can spend money to make that person's day. And the key to problem resolution is making the customer glad that the problem even happened in the first place. That's a win, right?
Yeah.
So that acknowledgement and resolution of problems, that's the gift of empowerment. That's the power of empowerment.
Yeah.
So that you can just, again, let them unleash their gifts on your clientele.
Yeah.
So
well, I cut you off a little earlier as you were talking about Mystique, because I wanted to just kind of get some nuts and bolts on that. But you started to talk about rewards and recognition as well as another component of this. Sure.
So I think that I was getting ready to go down sort of this Generation Z rabbit hole, but I think it works. I know it works with everybody. I think that people want community. People want their voices to be heard. They want to make an impact. They want development pathways, and they want to be recognized. And so I think for job well done. And so we've used a couple of practices that, one of the most powerful is called first class. And so we've created these simple postcards, 5x7, maybe a little bit bigger. So across the top of it, it says first class, right? And so if I do something that's pretty cool and I have a big win or I wow somebody, I'm not going to stand in morning lineup and say, hey, guess what I did yesterday? This is really, really cool. But I might have seen somebody who did. And so I'm going to take this card, I'm going to write a couple of words on it saying, wow, job well done. And I'm going to proceed to tell the team. So I'm going to walk across the room, give this first class card to Jan, and I'm going to tell the team what Jan did. This was first class all the way. Here, she wowed the pants off of this guest, and here's how it happened. And so that has great power, and we've seen this happens every day. I think they'll one or two first class cards are given out as part of our morning lineup. At the end of the year, I think it's important to have, we call it a credo award, but it's a written why said person exemplifies the reflections, orthodontics, culture, and the credo, and so it's we give this out. It's a nice recognition. It's monetary. It's a plaque. It's so things like that. Just job well done.
Yeah.
To reward great performances.
Yeah.
And it just more so acknowledgement than really reward too. So.
Well, it seems like between Mystique and sort of the job well done process that. What you're doing is, at its simplest terms, is aligning people around a purpose, but also you're encouraging everyone to be paying attention, right? Like I think that's something that struck that even from our previous conversation I didn't necessarily catch, is that you have your people paying attention to the little conversations or the side conversations or the little details with a client or a child or what have you, or you have your team paying attention not to just getting through the day, but saying, man, Scott stepped up there where somebody else needed help. I wasn't even a part of the process, but I observed it, and since I observed it, I want to be part of rewarding it. I mean, I think just that that paying attention.
Right. That's our second service standard.
Oh, is it? I did not know that.
So, this is one of the most powerful practices that we've adopted from the Ritz process. Is our credo card has 10, not 12 standards. But the key with this is that they're very organized. Every sentence, every period is organized on this card. So if you look at the 1 through 10, the bottom 3 are pretty functional, what I call them, that, if you don't do said standard, then you probably won't be open very long. Things like, HIPAA compliance, and
sure.
how clean are your bathrooms, how sterile are your instruments. I mean, these things. How do we look as a team? How do we sound as a team? What are patients hearing? That kind of thing. A safe and accident-free work environment, that kind of thing. The middle four are really, I think, good companies do. I think that's where you have a process for strategic planning and sort of focus on teamwork and problem resolution, things like that. But the top three, that's the rare air. That's the good from the great from the good, right?
Yeah.
So number one is our why. Number two is what we call radar on and antenna up. And so that's where we get into this anticipatory service of, if we're reading and paying attention to body language, right? If we're hot summer day and we've got the AC revved up in the morning and a patient's body is just kind of quivering in the chair, don't wait till they ask you for a blanket. Put a blanket over them. Paying attention and acknowledging said things. So that's number two. But of course, number one is always the why, and that's, you're here to drive and create and culture relationships. We want to create relationships that last a lifetime.
Yeah.
Yep.
You talked before when we talked about, there were times, even as the orthodontist in the building, or one of the orthodontists in the building, that there were times where even you felt like, oh man, I'm not dying to go to work today. Like this is a little bit rough, right? You had that sense of dread, and we
Absolutely.
all know as leaders, we're trying to pay attention to that to our people. And so when you were going through this process, you had some very specific work to do. You had a team that was operating in the real world. You had your own sense of passion about your profession and your own purpose. What was the first thing you did? So we're talking about culture, and we're talking about these big things. When you started to think about how you rebuilt a sense of purpose with your team and for yourself, what was like step one, step two, for anybody listening to say, like, this is the kind of thing you can turn around and start moving on without getting swallowed by the abstraction and hugeness of culture and purpose and those kinds of things?
Right. It really doesn't have to be that complex. It starts with, what do you want that to be? What is it you want to create? And then you have to put it on paper. You have to put words to it. For me, it was about step one, presenting the vision, if you will, the purpose, the just cause, to my immediate leadership team. And I knew that on the present team back at the time, I had 9. Okay, if we're all on the boat together, and you've got 9 paddlers, you've got 3 or 4 that are along for the ride, and you've got 3 boat sinkers, as I call them. So we had to get rid of the boat sinkers, and so that really, the step one is people. So align the people that I knew would be excited about the vision, lay it out in front of them, hear them, get the feedback, and then you have to then design that credo card. You have to say, okay, what does this mean, and what do we want to accomplish, and what is our credo going to read, and get their feedback. Get their. I wrote the employee promise with the help from those ladies on my leadership team. They know what engages them and we're all aligned in that. So again, it was about defining that delivery method and be very clear with it. Then, I believe then you have that purpose, and purpose breeds passion. You talk about not wanting to get up and go to work. We were there. We had days that we knew if so-and-so was having a day, then it was going to be a rough day in the clinic that day. And it shouldn't be that way, right? It keeps people's gifts from being expressed, and it doesn't bring out everybody's best, right? Everybody's more in defensive mode and dread mode and so forth. But if I get up every morning and I'm excited to be around the people that I'm about to be around, then it doesn't feel like work, right? And if I am having a dread day, it's not long before, once around those people, that feeling goes away.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not feeling good physically,
Yeah.
that really makes a huge difference. Then, it's about having a line in the sand moment. You have to have first, I think, a process to offboard the boat sinkers, right? For us, that was a 3 strikes and you're out policy. Against what? Against the credo card. If I didn't execute the 3 steps of service well, strike 1. It's a learning moment. We say even in a broader group, no name calling, but here's an example of how the 3 steps of service was executed here. Here's how it should look. We all learn from it. Strike 2 is more of a personal, maybe between me or practice manager or both, and the person who, and it has to be the same thing. Can't be different things, but the same thing. Strike 2. It's more of a help me understand the barriers that are keeping you from executing this how it's supposed to be. And then still more of a learning moment, but they agree that 3 strikes and you're out. So then we can unleash their talent to the competition, as they say. So right. So and it works. I early on was tested with one of those 3 boat sinkers. Right. They I had figured that it would be fault, if you will. It worked beautifully. Just turned it right over to the unemployment, and they were denied, and so I think everybody saw that and said, hey, this works. And so how did your team respond? So I think that you could see a small team and losing just a couple of people, you think, how are you going to even get your work done, kind of responses. Did people feel a tightening? Did they feel more vulnerable, or did they go, oh, thank God they finally moved on employee X? This is such a great question. It was the most profound moment, and this at the time I had been in practice maybe 13 years or so. In those 13 years, it was the happiest workplace I'd ever seen.
Even with understaffed.
I had begun recruiting some talent, and for I think it was about a period of about 3 weeks, Anderson, we were 2 down in a busy practice, growing practice, and it was the best, most efficient workplace. And in fact, this lady that was then a lab tech blossomed as a result of 2 of these people being gone. She's the best TC in America working with reflections. Right, she is one of my key leaders. She just grew from that moment, and she is absolutely one of my most important employees. And so it was an incredible workplace. And then we were very, very hyper focused and disciplined on who we let onto the team, into the tribe. So, that's the big one.
And how did that, building on that, being careful from there forward to hire with these new kind of standards in mind, this new thinking, this purpose first and service first kind of mindset, what did you have to change in your recruitment or hiring or training process to sustain that as you inevitably brought in new folks, both for growth and because of natural attrition?
Absolutely. This is the most important part, right, of the whole thing. Again, it's a select versus hire mentality, and it's the first who, then what. Our hiring strategy grew into a 5-tiered hiring strategy. So that's a deeper discussion, but basically there's 5 filters before someone starts day one. So this is is this person our people, or are they not? And skills are important, but we can teach skill. We're looking for heart, so we hire for heart. And so, and of course, they have to bring certain fundamentals to the table depending on where they're working. Beyond that, I can't overemphasize onboarding. And so an onboarding process grew out of that. As soon as we agree that we're going to work with this person, I think it's important to make them feel part of the team before day one. So they've had meaningful one-on-one time with me. They can, hear the vision firsthand, and I think that's very important. If you're a CEO, then absolutely have that one-on-one time as a pre-onboarding step. Super important. And then from us, they get a box of swag with branded material, name tags, scrubs, some things, make them feel part of the family before they get there. Day one is a huge day. We have our culture captain. She's waiting at the door for them, welcoming them into the team, introductions, going around, opening duties, part of lineup, well, the lineup that morning is, and when I say lineup, that's our morning huddle. I don't think we've talked about that much, but morning lineup is definitely a Ritz Carlton best practice, and it's like a huddle on steroids. But it's all about that new person, and then we're really not even concerned with functional duty in the first couple of days. It's all about a cultural indoctrination. Seeing the 3 steps of service in action, seeing how patient engagement goes, seeing how we drive relationships. Sure, they're doing some back work that she's with a person, but the focus for the first 2 to 5 work days is all culture.
Yeah.
With some background learning of the practice management system or whatever they're going to be doing. So, but that's the key focus. Then I think also it's ultra important to hopefully through 5 tiers and meaningful time with the person, you have some understanding of what makes them tick. And I think that giving them a developmental pathway professionally, and which also lends to personal development, is super important, and documenting it, giving them milestones. You might not know where they want to be 5 years from now, especially if they're super young, but some do. You'll be surprised. But giving them a pathway for learning and growth is super, super important. And I think sort of the last addition to that would be once they're onboarded, it is what we call rolling review, where it is a constant process for touch points. How are you doing? How are you feeling? A rolling review is 5 minutes or less. It was with an area leader, it's with me perhaps, but it's targeted. I think the research shows that the closer once you crest this 10-month point with constant engagement, then you have an advocate of your brand, and that turnover then drops off. That risk for turnover, that retention rate goes way up after that 10-month period with constant engagement from day 1 to month 10. And so once you get further away from that start line, you obviously don't need the cadence to be as high with those touch points. But we found that those rolling reviews are a critical pathway. And again, understanding, especially with this newer generation of workforce, I believe still, we mentioned it before, this community, this way to have voices heard, which is the rolling review thing, allowing them to make an impact and giving them that developmental pathway really bodes well to great employee retention today. So, well,
you dropped a term in there that I want to make sure I don't skip over. You said culture captain greets the new person at the door. What in the world is a culture captain, Scott?
Yeah. So this is her name is Amy Joyner. She was hired. This is a perfect example of getting the right people on the right seats on Jim Collins' bus. She was hired as an assistant, and left-handed, fumbled, around, just was uncomfortable back there. But she would light the room, and you talk about somebody on fire for the purpose. She had been in workplace for most of her career, and she was more mature. She was not somebody right out of school. She had a career, and so she wanted to come over. She had heard, this was after we had rebranded, and we had been working with this for 4 years, 5 or so, and so she came, was hired as assistant, and I'm like, what in the world do we have you back here for? So we moved her into more of an administrative, patient facing. I wanted everybody to see her when she came in. She was the sunshine. She was just, she just exuded culture as good as anybody, and she was passionate about new employees. And so again, learning about this, and so she knows every letter and lives every letter. She enlivens the standards on that credo card. She lives them. They're not words on a card. They are in her. And so she's passionate about onboarding, passionate about teaching, and she does a lot of our community engagements as well, marketing. But one of the hats she wears is culture captain.
Yeah.
So she's in charge of training and staff functions, team functions, and so forth.
Yeah. It's amazing. Right. You prove the value of a thing by having someone like that in that role, right? Like you can talk about culture and you can talk about things like that, but just kind of let them passively happen. And so having someone that actually has that sort of moniker for your team, I think speaks to how you've invested there. I do want to go back to something else that you've said, because I think it's an important, and I know you choose your words wisely, but you've used the word brand a number of times. And I would love for you to say more as you think about your customer relationships and the services you provide, about how you think about brand, and maybe how the Ritz made you think about brand in a way that was transformative, right? I think it's easy to fall in to say somebody came in for this service, they had a decent experience, they left and they had gotten the service, and so we did what we needed to do. But you've used the word brand a few times. Can you just talk a little bit about that?
No, I'd love to. I love the exercise of looking at a logo, right? A brand logo like Amazon, Apple, the Ritz Carlton Lion. You know, when you look at one of those brands, 4, 5, 6 adjectives come to mind. You know what you're going to get without any words. You know what that brand means, what it stands for. We wanted culture to be our brand, meaning that. So when this practice, founded in 1948, my mentor was incredible. He taught me a lot about early business, but he also taught me a lot about excellence in orthodontics as an art and science. And so to this day, I don't know anybody that can finish a case like Jerry Carr. He is tremendous. So we had that excellence moniker already as part of the old brand, but we wanted this new brand. First thing that pops into mind was feeling, experience, best service. We wanted to really be transformative within healthcare. So sadly, I think healthcare has the opportunity to be the ultimate service industry. However, we've all had perhaps not pleasant experiences at hospital waiting rooms or doctor waiting rooms. We have people that don't look you in the eye. And so we wanted to kind of defy, kind of like what we're doing with Southern Orthodontic Partners. You know, corporate has a negative stigma in healthcare, but we're creating a very positive stigma in healthcare. Certain things we can do with it than without it. But back to Reflections, it's definitely about how we make people feel. Relationships for life. You know, this is what we want the brand, and have thankfully, due to a great team, made the brand stand out. So, you know, we love our feedback from patients, and we solicit that. We get organic reviews, and thankfully, and it makes me really happy and proud that that's the common theme in so many of these feedback reviews is, you know, you made me feel like family. You make me feel like family. And so that's really rewarding. Yeah. And that again is a brand association. If I'm wearing a ball cap with just the squiggly Reflections line on it, then you know what you're going to get. Yeah. And that's the idea.
And how do you capture that? So you're talking about customer feedback. Can you share some of the ways that you're figuring out if you're living up to that brand? You know, what are some of the measures that you have for whether or not on a quarterly basis you're achieving these aspirational brand milestones?
Yeah, some of it's direct feedback, and I have not been in the past very scientific with it. Years ago, I did my own sort of a Survey Monkey, real simple type thing that we would ask. We would have a process for capturing, getting that back. We used via SOP, you know, we're using NPS now. So that's Net Promoter has been something, and that's what the Ritz uses. And so I've always wanted to use that, but happy that we have been able to use that. But the third is just direct feedback, you know, and then we as a team, part of our lineup in the mornings is more of, it falls within this problem resolution, but how did we do yesterday? Mm-hmm. You know, feedback, you know, kind of a real brief sort of deconstruction of yesterday. Where did we run late? If so, why? How were patient emotions? And mm-hmm. you know, the front desk is really key. They have a broad view over the whole thing, and so we know if we're making people happy or not. It comes back
to that radar thing for partly, right?
That's the whole essence of it. Absolutely. Yep. Yeah. That's the second standard.
So everybody on the team knows what great customer relationships look like, and they're tuned in enough to know we did it or we didn't based 100%. On our standards.
And, you know, Mrs. Smith at 2:00 was up irritated. Here's why. We're running 10 minutes late. If so, why? Somebody put an appointment there that shouldn't have been there. Don't do that. So that's that we have a template for a reason. Now, if the template's not big enough, then it's leadership's responsibility to revise the template. So again, this is where the chain of events occurs there. So,
So, and if there are other questions, feel free to drop this in the Q&A. I do want to ask a question that dovetails with one of my own. Is you talked a little bit about the huddle or the stand up. Mm-hmm. What are some of those day-to-day kind of maintenance practices that that keep all of this living, keep all the conversation happening, keep the information flowing, keep the perspectives flowing on Miss Smith who had a bad interaction, whatever? What are some of just the operational sides of things?
Fundamentally, lineup is absolutely number one every day. It's how we start every day. It's a non-negotiable. If you're late, if you're not in lineup, you're late, right? It's about lineup real quick. It's not a time suck. Okay. It cannot be rules of the road. It cannot be more than 15 minutes, 10 to 15 minutes. If anything is longer than 15 minutes, it's a meeting, and nobody needs another meeting in their life. So this has to be succinct. It's very, very, very detailed process. But step one, 100% is on our Credo card. There's 14 tenets. We highlight one of those tenets on a rotating basis every day to start lineup. If I'm running lineup, it's here's standard number one. Here's what it says. Here's what it means to me. Here's an example of something great that happened that highlights one, right? So beyond that, then we're breaking the schedule down. We're looking at problem resolution, looking at feedback from the prior day, a dissection there. We're talking about announcements, community involvement, things. So it's very, very succinct, okay? Beyond that, Anderson, we it's very important with leadership. We have put a framework for feedback from the field, especially now that we're scaling and going more multi-site with our practice and broadening our footprint. This is critical that we have a process for daily, weekly, monthly, quarterly meetings with leadership. So we all have people underneath us, so to speak, that we're sort of in charge of their feedback and touch points and so forth. But these are very important for scale. I think that we need those, and that lets us know sort of that way. If I'm working in a practice across town, then I know I hear at the end of a day, how do we do over here? Most importantly, if there's any human resource problems, if somebody's having an issue, that's a red light, and I want to know about it that day. So I've got a process for knowing how the team's doing, for that day. So these are really important. So I think that you're talking about day-to-day process.
Yeah, just those little sort of rituals that you do, and operational kinds of things that you do that are not the big things, but are kind of the things that keep this living on a daily or weekly basis.
Sure. And those, I'd say, thirdly, the rolling reviews are a must. I think these are, especially if it's a newer employee, then you need to really be mindful. Hey, how'd today go? What's working? What's not working? Tell me about your day. That kind of thing. So sometimes all you need is how are you doing? That knowing that leadership cares and I have a voice here has been profoundly powerful.
Yeah. So. And another question. So when you consider the job market right now and how tight things are, and how have you found the higher standard, so to speak, has played out in your ability to fill your key roles? Has it invited more people into the practice, or has it created any challenges, right? So if you're looking for a new receptionist or and you come in and you got all of these sort of process, how has all of this impacted that select versus hire process for you in a really tight labor market?
It tests your patience and it tests your discipline. Are you going to fill the seat with somebody that shouldn't be there, that isn't equipped for this level of service? So absolutely, it's challenging. I will tell you that this is one of the great benefits of our platform. Emily Leonard is our chief people officer, and her team is the best. I don't know how I've survived without her up to date, but she definitely helps that as we cast that net. we have more candidates to work through with a great human resource department. But it's, at the end of the day, it's up to us to be disciplined. Are we going to choose to work with this person or not?
Yeah.
But certainly it's challenging, especially if it's in a more of a specialized position. Somebody like somebody that's going to be working in administration or at the front desk. Certainly we have more candidates in a role such as that. But ultimately, we're definitely hiring for the heart first.
So when you think about this process now that it's sort of part of the daily, right? It is part of the culture. It would be easy. It would be easier to look and think, well, yes, it's nice for people to have a good experience and to feel happy that they've come here. But at the end of the day, what they really care about is, are their teeth straight, and did that happen the way that, and this process that Scott's talking about seems big, and it seems laborious and potentially expensive, and I just need to make sure people's teeth are straight. Like, how do you respond to that with sort of years of wisdom of how this process has impacted you, your business, your team, and so forth?
It's been transformative, in an era where there is more turnover than ever. We're enjoying better retention significantly. Again, if you create an environment where people are excited to come be together in a day, then that's a huge win. It's been transformative. It's been, creating a brand and then scaling the brand through the support with Southern Orthodontic Partners. It literally is just foundational to why we exist. So, sure. I mean, it begins with, why are you here, and what purpose do you have in mind, and do you have a just cause, right? And ours is completely centered around relationships. It doesn't have to be for every orthodontic practice. So certainly it's about straightening teeth and delivering excellence, in orthodontics for sure. But is there something else?
Yeah.
So we were just that in our former life. We didn't really have that as a key focus, right? So again, it's why are you here, and then defining that just cause, and then finding the people that are passionate about the same just cause. So,
and another quick question here. So before, give us a sense. So we've talked a lot about what you've learned and where you've gone and how you've chosen to get there. What was a leading or a couple of misunderstandings or misalignments or misframings that you had about your work and your role and your relationship to your customers prior to this transformation? So if we go back and define this in negative terms, so to speak, not judging at all, but just what were you missing before? What were you doing that you thought was right but wasn't?
What were we doing that we thought was right? Well, it was more about focus, Anderson, than anything, right? It's sure, we were focused on growing, we were focused on straightening teeth, but the patient experience just wasn't on the radar at all, right? And then it became about, how are we going to differentiate? That's the line in the sand, is that trends were shaping the specialty at the time, right? We had new generation of doctor desiring different pathways. We had fewer wanting to purchase practices. We had consumerization of healthcare really hitting orthodontics in a big way. We had consolidators starting to enter our space. So all these things coming together, how are we going to differ? How are we going to be different? Why would people want to come to us? Yeah. It wasn't to sit in the lobby and not be acknowledged. It certainly wasn't that. You're not going to differentiate that way. Competition was rising. DSOs were moving to town with hiring orthodontists and so forth. And so how are we going to be among a cluster of 15 orthodontic practices? Why is somebody going to choose us? Yeah. How do we make people want to be there? Yeah. So that's how it wasn't being looked at.
Yeah. And just one last question. if you think about anybody in the Shore portfolio, whether they're providing healthcare or providing business services or dealing with vendors, or this idea of customer, we're talking about that through your lens and your experience, right? But this is about relating to the people who matter most to you and that drive your business, right? It could be any relationship in any direction in any kind of business, right? There's nothing. I mean, this came from hotels and hospitality. We're talking about it in the realm of orthodontics. It could be in tech services. It could be in any space you're dealing with a customer, a vendor, or business relationship. So if you look at somebody in any of our portfolios and you have advice for them on just questions to ask themselves about how they and their team are thinking about customers, what advice would you offer just to kickstart this process if they're just thinking about it?
Yeah. Is it about people? I mean, at the end of the day, that's what it's all about, right? I mean, look at the team, look at turnover, look at statistics within, look at client feedback, look at growth, look at what's happening at that moment of truth that engages the customer with the business, right? I tell my team all the time that I would take the same group of people and we could go open a chain of dry cleaners or convenience stores, because we know why we're here. And I think that, if you have high turnover, if you have, stunted growth, or you want to take a business to that next level, I truly believe with all my heart that, much like the Ritz, it's about how your people feel first within the walls of your business, and then how does the community, how does the public feel about you? Do they want to engage with you? Yeah. Right. So I think it absolutely though starts within the walls of the business, and you have to give people a reason to stay, because we're in the age of if people will just go, the big quit is real, right? Yeah. So and so you have to give people a reason to stay. I don't think we'll ever outpay the problem. I think you have to give people, again, a sense of community, a pathway for professional development, make them be excited that they're going to be around the people that you need to be around. So. Yeah. At the end of the day, that's what the Ritz has done. They've scaled it ultimately to 50,000 employees worldwide, several continents, and so they're all reading from the same why purpose there. So, yeah.
Well, Scott, Dr. Blackman, thank you so much for your time today. This has been an incredible conversation. I know you and I have talked before. We could go on for hours more, but we're out of time this time. Maybe we'll continue to dig deeper into your brain. So thank you for being here. Thanks for your time. Thank you, everyone who joined. We will get this up on YouTube and share it out to our companies as well. So we will make this available. But thanks so much for being here, Scott.
No, thank you. The pleasure's mine. Always a pleasure. So
thank you.
Thank you.